What are your thoughts on soundboard choosing? Like, what's the relationship between the width of the grain and the sound of the finished instrument and things like that?
Yeah, that's really fascinating. That's an area that luthiers struggled with, probably still do, for quite a long time, and I never could understand that myself. Only because I approached a piece of wood from how it felt and sounded, not how it looked. Now, obviously, I'm not going to put a bunch of knots and discolorations on a $5,000 guitar. But having said that, I never was someone who had to have a very thin grain, fine grain top, graduating out slowly to slightly wider texture to the outer bouts. I felt that if it had a good tap tone and I flex it always as I'm working it, that was my criteria for, the sound I was after and how I was going to brace up the guitar, and maybe which soundboard I was going to select for which body. I will say that again, there's so much more available now than when I was building 22 years ago. One of the things I did find that we got probably some of the best Sitka spruce we ever got from the Charlottes. And it was slightly wider grain, maybe 12 grains to the inch or so. What I liked about that wood, once it was dry, it tended to be lighter in weight than a lot of Sitka can be, Sitka is among the heavier soundboards of the spruces that you can use. And this stuff also had a really nice stiffness to it. It made a great bluegrass guitar, in my opinion. But always people preferred German if they were going to buy a real fancy guitar, and there's good reasons why they would pick that. Also experiment, and I'm sure you have, a lot more experimenting done now than back in my day, but experiment with the hardwoods in your soundboards. Those are a lot of fun. You get some really interesting, charming sounds out of those depending upon how you brace them and how you thickness them.
Where would you start with something like that? Would you thickness it to approximately the same as a softwood top?
No, I would take it down much thinner.
Okay.
Yeah.
But brace it similarly, or would
you could, depending on the style of guitar that you were making, and then what kind of sound you were hoping to get out of it. Yeah. Yeah. But I think the hardwoods typically would be thickness thinner. Okay. Generally speaking, Martin had. This is not working. Generally speaking, Martin had thin tops with heavier braces. Gibson had thick tops with lighter braces back in the day. And they got sounds that people would identify as, oh, that sounds like a great old J45 or, J200. And Martin Dreadnought, was kind of the standard of the industry, especially the pre-war. And they conceptualized their soundboard treatments completely differently. And they got different sounds because of it. So you had to once you got what they were doing, and then you just would depart from that and decide, well, what kind of sound do I want to steer towards? And of course your back and sides have a lot of coloration influences on the kind of guitar sound that you get, the acoustic value of it. And then obviously the size of the instrument, and then how deep or shallow you make the sides. That's always fun.
Is there a reason to stay away from, let's say, mahogany for braces? I like the look of mahogany.
Are you talking about on the top plate?
Yeah, all the way through, the top and back.
Huh. Well, I don't know.
I've made a guitar with nothing but mahogany top and back braces.
Braces?
To me, it sounds all right.
Yeah.
I'm not that good at doing what I do, so I don't have anything to compare it to, but it seems all right.
I know mahogany.
The look is real nice. I like the look.
What is?
The look.
Of the mahogany. Yeah, I would think it would be really startling to drop a mirror in that. The reason that the softwoods were used is because there was generally lightness to the wood, where mahogany would tend to be a little heavier. And when on quarter, the softwoods on quarter, they tend to be pretty stiff. Now you may have found that to be the case with mahogany too, I don't know. Mahogany is a very stable wood, fortunately. It dries with its pores open, but it also stabilizes, unlike maple, our best friend maple, which doesn't stabilize for a long time. So But yeah, I'm curious, what did you think of the sound of the guitar?
Well, I think it sounds as good as the spruce.
The spruce,
braces,
yeah.
No discernible difference anyway.
I know a friend of ours used to brace with fir. He just felt fir was a thing. That's what he used. Nowadays, the people that are making the high-end multi 20, 30,000 guitars, they all want the red spruce braces, and they feel that that's the stiffest possible thing that you can get and the best sound. I don't know. Red spruce wasn't out there when I was doing this. Anything else? Anybody else?
Yes. When you're making all little changes, how do you discern just what factors change the sound? Like, because you have to get to the end of a guitar and finish it and play it before you can even really test it.
Right.
So how do you factor in with, do you build a guitar the same apart from one little thing that you change, or like how closely can you replicate one instrument by making changes to discern what element made the difference?
So that's a really good question, and it's really one that's hard to answer. I think as a luthier, private luthier working by yourself, that would be really tough, because you tend to produce instruments more slowly than we would even in a small shop, right? When I left, we were doing one guitar a day, so I saw the results fairly quickly before the end of the month. But
you need the volume.
You need the volume to be able to do the test. You can keep notes. There are a lot of people who keep pretty scrupulous notes about what they did. I relied on my ear, and I was always, I am one of those people that taps stuff. I feel it. I'll run my hand over something to see if I like the timbre of it.
Yeah, I do that.
I didn't get out of smelling it, I mean, there's things about it that you learn about the way I feel, perhaps on more of an intuitive level, not necessarily something that you could quantify, but I tried not to make too many changes on one guitar, because then you're lost. You have no way of knowing what worked and what didn't work. So, yeah, but I think as a luthier, you're usually more free to be able to do those kinds of things without having to stare down somebody who's judging you about what you did, or having to feel as though you had to explain, like you did this to Tony Rice. Well, he likes the guitar sound, but he doesn't like the way it plays. Well, that's interesting. I don't know what to do about that.
Don't let him have a mirror.
Yeah, we should have denied him the mirror. I saw that coming too when he asked me, "Do you have a mirror?" Wow, this is interesting. Do you have a mirror? Yeah, we do. So I didn't, mostly, my part of the guitar was building the soundboards, the necks, doing the finish work, the setup, and all that kind of stuff. My partner at that time was putting together bodies and stuff, so he was more versed in what variables, if any, that he would do to change the bodies in terms of the construction of the overall box before it got to finish, if you will.
Were you guys using CNC equipment for your necks?
No, my time in guitar building was before the guitar making machines came along. Yeah, in fact, when I went to consult for Martin, I was aware that Bob Taylor had just, we were pretty good friends with Bob, he had just gotten 2 Footalls, and was experimenting with programs, putting them up and getting them running. And I was trying to convince Martin to go that direction. They thought I was just nuts. The machines are too expensive, they're too slow. I said, yeah, but they do it every day, all day, and they don't take breaks, and you just change the bits, and there's ways to apply that technology that you're going to see it, and then within a couple of years they were doing the same thing. One thing we did too, also I forgot to mention, we did hard maple bridge plates, which I found very effective for certain kinds of town. Particularly would sharpen up and brighten up the bassier dreadnoughts. For some reason, I guess Martin probably had an awful lot of rosewood end cuts. They started making their bridge plates out of rosewood, these huge monstrous flutes, and I thought it just really killed the sound of the guitar. It kind of deadened it. And they actually reverted back to hard maple bridge plates, I think, in the early 90s. And in the 90s is when the younger people in Martin began to take over the helm of the ship. Chris Martin, who now is the owner and kind of the, he's the sole owner, but at any rate the CEO of Martin, made some sweeping changes, and they really got down to trying to figure out what they did well prior to World War II that really had enhanced their reputation. I think they've done an excellent job of getting back to those general aesthetics and characteristics. From a company who was pretty stodgy and building, just trading on their name and putting out guitars that would sell themselves based solely on their name. And like I said, I think that really is part and parcel of what it let people like ourselves, Collings, Taylor, all the younger generation of guitar makers into the market for free. And we were in there trying to make better sounding guitars. Martin was just making Martin guitars.
What kind of glues were you using?
Mostly we use the aliphatic resins, Type-On, that kind of stuff for most all the applications. Another thing we did too, which was kind of unusual, especially for luthiers back then, is we used the Swedish plywood. You folks familiar with that? The less than 1/8 of an inch plies that they glue together, probably minimum 5, maybe 7. I always do them in odd numbers. We found that there was one that just exactly fit the kerfing thickness plus the side. The purpose for that is to get rid of that end block dimple that you see on guitars right here and here from the end block. The other purpose, of course, is a little more freedom to the top. There's no vulnerability. That plywood is going nowhere. And when you drill through your end pin, Martin always had that end pin crack. Somebody dropped a guitar, it would split all the way around the sides. That's instantly resolved. So it made a lighter guitar, made it more stable. We just felt it was an overall improvement. But we took some hits on the, oh my God, you're using plywood on your guitars? Yeah, but just in this one place. Well, thanks. I'm going to be sticking around. If anybody has any other questions, let me know. I think you're going to be speaking on FSC? Good.
Yeah, sure.
Hopefully you can have a better time with this thing than me.
Do I have to speak for that?
I don't know.
As you like it.
Well, maybe not.
I have a boomier voice.
I do need perhaps 1 or 2 minutes to set up. Is there perhaps a chance for people just to...
Yeah, absolutely.